Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron Sherinian, and on behalf of the United Nations Foundation and the Plus Social Good partners and a community from around the world, it's a privilege to welcome you to Climate Summit 2014 Plus Social Good. We're coming to you live today from the UN Correspondents Association Lounge in the center of the action here at the United Nations headquarters in New York City, but also throughout Manhattan, where people have gathered together with NGO partners as people come together at the Harvard Club, where groups of NGOs are meeting together, talking through other conversations and digital media meetups that are taking place from around the world. So whether it's here in the island of Manhattan or from around the world as part of the Plus Social Good community, today is a global conversation that puts at the very center a topic that matters to everyone, and that's climate change. Today at the United Nations, world leaders and experts, activists, actors, everyone who has a stake in this is talking about what are the implications of and what can be done about climate change. The social media community, the community of people who care about social issues, people who are looking at climate change as part of their everyday lives, have taken to their various platforms to opine and to call for action. We hope that what we'll see today is a vibrant conversation that's as vibrant as the community itself, and that at the same time is as based in urgency and reality and accountability as the issue of climate change.
We live in a very important time. I think that we live in a very intriguing time. There are so many issues that the world is facing right now that we've never really had to face uh, as a, I guess, collectively as humankind before, as we do today. And I think it's really remarkable that at the same time we also have the tools to mobilize our opinions, mobilize our objectives, our agendas to mass audiences, literally all over the world, and get people's voices heard that would normally not have been heard. So I think it's an incredibly empowering time, and that's the one thing that I really find most intriguing, especially about the climate crisis that we're in right now, is that we actually do have the power to make the change. We don't have to wait for some big, group to do it for us. We can do that ourselves, and we can put pressure on companies, and we can put pressure on our governments, and we can put pressure on our own communities to do something differently. And I think that that's something that's unique to our generation. The thing that I am most optimistic about, especially when it comes to climate issues, is that we are the cause and we are the solution.
Sustainable development means that economic, social, and environmental issues are all interconnected, and that the way out of our crises is to have goals for ending poverty, social inclusion, and environmental sustainability, including stopping human-made climate change. If human-made climate change continues out of control the way that it is right now, I'm afraid that the dangers for all of us will be unmanageable. The food supply, the heat waves, the droughts, the floods, the storms, the rising ocean levels. I don't want to say it's going to happen. Certainly, we will head it off. But unless we do head it off, the world's in a direction of more and more calamities. We've been a little bit blind to that because we're used to doing things as usual. And there are a lot of vested interests that just say, continue doing what you're doing. Drive the same kind of car if you have a car, or have the same use of coal if you have an industrial sector. And when it all adds up, we're wrecking the environment because we're not thinking clearly that we need a different direction. But today at the United Nations, there's a lot of energy and emphasis on the need for the whole world to change course to a safer course, safer on climate, safer on food security, safer on, therefore, achieving a shared well-being. And that's really what all of this is about.
The fact is, people like to focus on climate change as an issue that affects generations and that affects our children and our children's children. And for me, as a mother, but also as an islander, I'm constantly worried and afraid that our islands will be swallowed up by the sea, and then she won't know her culture or her heritage, because we Marshallese people are totally tied to our land. Our roots, our identity, everything is in the land.
What is your message to the world on climate action?
Well, I have a few messages. Is it okay to say more than one?
Please do.
Well, one message is that we need to take action now, that we can't wait any longer. Another message is that a lot of the media has focused on where islanders should relocate to, whether we should move to New Zealand or to America or something like that, And I just want people to know that we shouldn't leave, and we shouldn't have to leave, and we should be able to stay where we were born and where our ancestors have always been. And I want people to know that it isn't too late to start taking action so that we can prevent that from ever having to happen.
Here, and my congratulations to all of the folks here in the room who are really so busy helping the United Nations to get the message out that the time to take action on climate is now. Change is in the air, time to put a price on carbon. I can tell you, working with business leaders from all over the world, we have mobilized dozens of CEOs to come here to New York. They're meeting right now. They all agree, some of them at least, the majority, that it's time to get serious, that the old days of just making little projects here or there are over, that we have to name things for what they are. And this means, above all, that we have to put a price on carbon. So far, greenhouse gas emissions are largely free, although we know they cause huge damage. And not costing what causes damage is wrong. It distorts markets, it holds back clean investment, it blocks our actions, our behavior, our consumption. So our expectation for today is that we will build a whole new historic momentum where business, investors are making the case for carbon pricing.
What is the UNDP's role in this year's climate summit?
Well, the UNDP is the UN's largest development agency, and we're the backbone of the UN Development Group. So our concern is about the human development impacts of climate change, how this is affecting the poorest in the world, and how it's going to affect all of us moving forward, how we can have healthy economies, healthy bodies, prosperous governments, resilient nations in the face of this enormous climate change. So we're part of the general UN effort to make sure that governments, the private sector, communities, everybody who the Universal Declaration of Human Rights calls organs of society come together to make sure that we reverse this dreadful scourge upon the earth.
I know today there's been a lot of discussion about climate. What are the interventions? What can we do to really prevent climate change and really reduce the levels of temperature increase, etc.? And I'm really excited to say that the organization that I lead and the alliance of 1,000 different actors around the world have a very tangible intervention that can really help address climate change. And that is transitioning people from cooking over open fires and using cleaner fuels and cleaner burning stoves. So when you do move to cleaner burning stoves, you can reduce the effects of deforestation, you can reduce the levels of black carbon emitted into the atmosphere, you can reduce the levels of carbon dioxide. And just to put that in context, typically, usually a woman, daily will go out, walk for several hours and collect wood often. And so that wood obviously is contributing towards deforestation that is occurring. And so when she uses a cleaner, more efficient burning stove, there's less wood that's required. There's less agriculture waste or crops that are required to use this fuel, and that in itself can support and stop the deforestation.
Well, thank you. We work with a range of sizes of entrepreneurs, from the very small to the very large, and collectively last year they delivered solutions to about 21 million people around the world. And over the time that they've all been in existence, it's almost 250 million people who have benefited from their work. So we're here today really to hear about UN member states and the work collectively that governments are taking. But at the same time, we recognize that it takes all of us, private sector, civil society, alongside governments, really working hard to both help address the climate issue, but at the same time really ensure that we can promote and provide for sustainable development as well.
Today is an amazing opportunity for humanity, for world leaders who are coming together from governments, from the private sector, corporations, civil society, all walks and cities and mayors, all walks of life, to commit to actions and to recognize that climate change is one of the greatest challenges that humanity is facing now, and what steps are needed and commitments that are being announced today to address this challenge and moving forward in a way that will enable us next year at the COP21 in Paris, that there's enough commitments, enough action to enable us to remain within the predicted 2 degrees climate temperature increase in globally.
Climate change is not simply an environmental issue, it's a cross-cutting issue that affects our survival on the planet. And I think this gives us now a solid base to build, but people have to be very clear. We have to broaden this movement 100 times bigger than what we were yesterday, because all our political and business leaders all suffer from the same medical problem, and that is they all have a problem hearing. So the only way they're going to hear us is if our numbers are bigger and our voices are louder.
People can help stop climate change because happily it's being caused by other people. So if the people who want to do something about it, which is most of us, are able to break the power of the small number of people who insist on continuing to make money off fossil fuel, thanks to climate change, there's more frontline communities every day. More and more people are getting wrecked by what's happening around us. That's a pretty sad state of affairs. Mother Nature is doing her best to educate us. The question is whether we'll listen in time or not, and by us, whether or not we're able, as Kumi says, to shout loud enough to be heard over the dull roar of money.
We have a crisis on our hands, a human crisis. This is not an environmental crisis. Poor communities spend up to 75% of their incomes actually on food. And so for them, they're far more impacted when their food price spikes. So we're seeing that more people are going hungry because of climate change. So that's one very tangible impact. I think the Climate March was a nice beginning for people to start engaging in a more active way. And I think people need to start voting based on this issue. That's the one most important, especially in the United States. What people can do is they can vote based on climate change and whether or not their elected officials are doing anything about it. We saw Superstorm Sandy happen here in the New York City area 2 years ago. People certainly felt the effects of that, with more than $70 billion in damages from that one storm event. So I think people are feeling it, and that gives me hope personally that we're starting to see the decreasing costs of renewable energy around the world. We're seeing that more and more renewable energy can compete with fossil fuels, which actually is critically important if we're gonna win this fight.
We have range of experience across many countries that there are many solutions to adapt to climate change impacts, but it's very important to be able to support the efforts by local communities, and this requires much more action on the global level.
I'm a human being, and it's ultimate priority for me to fight for the right to live. We have programs across almost 90 countries, and really our focus has been to reach to the communities that have been suffering for the impact of the climate change. I'm coming from Tanzania, that's where I've been born and raised. 80% of the population are still farmers, rain-fed agriculture. So to them, the change of rain pattern does not only mean climate change, it means strengthening their daily food. It means kids are not going to school because they're not fed. We are not here to survive. We are here to live in a life of dignity that every human being has to enjoy. We all need to be active citizens. Climate change is not a distant phenomenon anymore. And it's our moral responsibility to be aware and act and demand our leaders to act.
Inaction is so much more costly than action right now. And we've been hearing that again and again. And the latest new climate economy report just reiterated that. Tackling climate change is feasible right now. People are fed up. People know what actually has to happen, and the leaders have to act right now. They really need to get right now to the bottom and say, we're going to phase out fossil fuel in my lifetime, in my children's lifetime. We're going to phase it out by 2050, and we're going to take very rapid actions to adjust transition to 100% renewables.
It's that personal connection that really creates a visceral response. There's really a collective mentality among youth, especially in the United States, revolving climate change. There are also just grassroots things that we can do personally as individuals that are more sustainable. Exchanging light bulbs once they go out for more environmentally friendly and sustainable systems, also using reusable bags at the supermarket, easy things such as that.
Climate change is the issue of our time. It affects millions of people all around this country, billions of people around the world. There isn't a person who isn't impacted by climate change. It keeps speaking up. We need leaders to take action, and leaders will only take action if they know that individuals want solutions. You have to be hopeful. I mean, it's a big challenge. It's a challenge of our time. But when you look at all the people who are impacted, you have to be hopeful because so many people, so many groups want action, and we need action.
As a young person, there's a lot I love in the world, and climate change really threatens to undermine that. We have tools that are available online on our website, climateinteractive.org, and they are there for people to take and run with. And so whether you're a teacher who has a class or a leader of a community group, you just want to bring people up to speed on what's going on, particularly around climate policy and the international scene, our tools provide a way.
When I understood climate change, it seemed to me that this was far worse, that this was a catastrophe that would not stop, that once it began, then what we would see was impacts which were social, political. We would see violence, migration, and I didn't really see that if we can't fix it now, I find it very difficult to see how we'll fix it later. Even 8 years ago, it was evident that China's development would make it one of the most important countries in terms of both the problem and the solution.
Sunday was a transformative moment in world history, I'd argue. 400,000 people in the streets of New York, hundreds of thousands more around the world. This is a burning political demand to really stop and put out the fire that's taking place around the world on climate. So I think that this will be a turning point, and we hope that world leaders respond to it. There's no one silver bullet to solving climate change. We need to be working on every level, but one key piece of the puzzle that's missing is a type of political ambition from our world leaders to not only secure national action, but also an international agreement in Paris. We're going to continue to fight for that, but by no means are we waiting for them to act.
I am passionate about climate change just because it affects our entire ecosystem, everything that we rely on for life and well-being. And I care not only about the well-being of people, but the well-being of the various living organisms on our planet. There are different marginalized communities that are disproportionately impacted in different ways. We're working on building resilient communities. So the very core issues that people want to see for their communities can be realized through kind of sustainable community models. And that includes having whole community approaches to building up sustainable communities. Everything from, changing personal habits, whether it's recycling or so forth, to actually making sure your voice is heard in forums like this. Just making sure that you are electing the right people into office who care about the climate and who care about the well-being of our ecosystem. Not just our president or even our Congress folks, but also people in the Public Utilities Commission, people in City Council who make decisions around local planning, people even on our zoning boards who make decisions about the zoning of and where these different facilities are placed.
The message of UNDP and Plus Social Good and of all of the voices that are here together today are that it will take all of us working together. It will take governments, it will take the private sector, it will take communities, it will take all of our efforts to make sure that we can stop climate change and save our world for all of us.
You are the generation that inherits the problems that have been given to you, and you are the generation that needs to solve these problems. We are in the age of sustainable development. That's the chance to use all the wisdom, all the knowledge, all the social media, all the global networks to take on the end of poverty, true social inclusion, and environmental sustainability. It's a great challenge, but what an opportunity.
There are various interventions that can support our efforts in climate change. Many of them are big and necessary. This is a small, cook stoves and fuels are a small, cost-effective mitigation measure that can really make a tremendous impact on our environment and on the future of for a healthy population.
We need to take action and help to create a more sustainable and just planet where we reduce our climate emissions, but at the same time, we provide the benefits that modern energy can bring to all of our people. We're working to bring sustainable energy for all, and we can do that in a way that's also friendly to our global climate.
This issue affects all of us, all people around the world, wherever you live, wherever you are. Climate change is already affecting you or will be affecting you. I don't think that I or anybody else can tell you what you can do, but you should know what steps you need to take to influence and improve your prospects for the future with a climate that generations to come will be looking back and saying, you saved our planet.
Right now, the most important thing that world leaders can do is deliver on their commitments to the Green Climate Fund.
Be a leader. It's about reducing emissions, about scaling up renewable energies, and it's also about helping local communities who are very much affected by climate change to build their own adaptive capacities.
Act now. The people have spoken around the world. And now it's actually not a choice anymore. You're either going to be part of history and lead on the action, or you will be completely forgotten. Action has to happen, and there's no time to wait.
Act now and listen to what youth have to say on climate change. We matter and we care.
Listen to the people. They want it, and it's not a political liability. Listen to the people, and you'll be fine, and we'll save the planet.
Now is the time for us to be heroic, to be leaders.
We've all been talking long enough. Please, please, get on with it.
Listen to the people in the streets. Hundreds of thousands are marching here in New York and around the world demanding action. Now it's your turn.
We really need to make sure that you are responding to the interests and the demands of the people, as opposed to what we often see, unfortunately, is in that corporations dominating the different decision making that we're making.
But there are those who see us, hands reaching out, fists raising up, banners unfurling, megaphones booming, and we are canoes blocking coal ships. We are the radiance of solar villages. We are the rich, clean soil of the farmer's past. We are petitions blooming from teenage fingertips. We are families biking, recycling, reusing, engineers dreaming, designing, building, artists painting, dancing, writing, and we are spreading the word. And there are thousands out on the streets, marching hand in hand, chanting for change now. And they're marching for you, baby. They're marching for us, because we deserve to do more than just survive. We deserve to thrive. Let me just end there.
Thank you for being a part of Climate Summit 2014 plus Social Good. A summit of this kind takes place only once in a lifetime, and it was excellent to see people coming together via interviews taking place here at the United Nations headquarters in New York City, to people opining from around the world via social media, to interviews from around various hubs where people are coming together to discuss the issue. We hope that what has been discussed today will promote conversation and action and a course forward for an issue that matters to everyone. Thank you.